For today's podcast, we'll be showing an example of a utility theory in travel mode choice. This is one of the series of lectures on transport planning. At the end of the podcast, you'll be able to see how a simple model of mode choice can be used to simulate how commuters trade off time and cost in making modal choice decisions, and to see how the effect of policy decisions on travel choices can be estimated. So to put it in context, on a personal level of context, let's talk about your own modal choices. What mode of travel did you use to get to the campus today? Did you choose to perhaps use an auto to drive or as a passenger? Did you choose to come in a minibus maxi taxi, or perhaps to use one of PTSC's large buses? Did you choose to get some exercise and cycle to campus? Or did you come in by walking with a group of friends or by yourself? Which mode did you choose? Whichever mode you chose, you would have probably been making that choice on the basis of some characteristics of the mode, and of course your own characteristics in terms of what your own resources were. So let's see what may have influenced your travel choice today. Main factors that influence travel choice would be time, or perhaps cost would be a key factor to influence travel choice, or maybe just a question of safety, comfort, or convenience. Or it could well be a combination of all three attributes. And it is that combination of attributes that make for a very interesting analysis of travel choice behavior. I want to introduce the concept of a generalized cost function and the question of disutility of travel. And this is what I'm talking about. You see, we did realize that, you want to travel because you need to get from where you are to some other place where that is important to get to. But that trip has a certain cost associated with it. You will have to spend time making the trip. You will have to spend money making the trip. And of course, you will experience some levels of discomfort, hassle, etc. in having to make that trip. All of those things are considered the negative consequences of making the trip. So how does a commuter choose the mode? Well, the theory that we are using today says that the commuter will choose the mode that has the lowest disutility. In other words, the lowest negative consequence, given that he has to make the trip. So that we envisage the function u, which is a linear function of the cost components of making the trip, but each component is weighted by a parameter which reflects the relative importance of that attribute to the commuter. So it's not just a straight addition of the factors. Let's see how it works in terms of the formulation of the utility function. If you use a binary example where we're just looking at two attributes, then we can expand the utility function in the form of a formula that says ui is equal to aix1 plus bix2, where ui is the utility of choice for person I, ai is the weight of the attribute x1 for that person I, bi the weight of that attribute x2 for that person I, where the weights are based on some empirical analysis of past travel choice behavior. So the model parameters ai and bi would have been derived from some prior analysis of behavior. Now, depending on your own circumstances, the values of ai and bi may vary. So let's have a look at the three persons who are the sample that we are going to consider today. Person 1, who we can call her Busy Betty, has an A of -1 and B of -2. Person 2, let's call him Broke Barry, has an A of -3 and a B of -1. And person 3, let's call him Steady Sam, has both A and B at -1. Now, just looking at those values of A and B, we can see that there are differences between these three persons. And based on these weights, if I were to ask, which of these persons is more money conscious or more, concerned about money, and which is more time conscious in their decision making, and which is neutral in terms of time and money, you can look at those parameters and realize that person 2, or Bob Barry, is the more money conscious person by looking at the weights that he attaches. Person 1, or Busy Betty, is a more time conscious person. And that neutral person is good old Steady Sam. So already we've seen some attributes of the people that would affect their attitude towards the attributes of the travel modes. Let's now superimpose the personal attributes on top of the modal attributes. And in this case, we are going to use just two modes for comparison, the car and the bus. And what we have identified is that all three persons experience the same levels of service in terms of cost and time. So that for the cost, car is 3 and bus is 1. In terms of the time, car is 1 and bus is 5. So that could be $3 versus $1. And in terms of time, it could be 1 hour versus a 5-hour trip, or maybe half-hour increments. But it doesn't matter because it's the relative weights we're looking at in this case. So the question is, given those attributes, can we determine which mode each of those three persons will choose? Well, to do that requires that we substitute that information that we have in terms of the weighting, as well as the information that we have in terms of the attributes x1 and x2, and what we will get is the following result. And I hope you got your results with your calculations. Person 1, Busy Betty, has a U car of -5, a U bus of -11. So she'll choose the one with the least disutility. In this case, she will choose the car for her trip. Person 2, or Broke Barry, has a U car of -10, a U bus of -8. So he will choose bus as his alternative mode, whereas person 3, or Steady Sam, has a U car of -4, a U bus of -6. In that case, he will choose the car as his modal choice. So we were able to use our model to determine which choice each of those persons would make. What else can we do with this model? Well, we can do some interesting things. For instance, what possible policy options could we use to change modal choice? Well, we recognize that we could decrease the cost of car for person 2, for Broke Barry, and he might switch to car. Not that we necessarily want to do that. We could also decrease the travel time by bus for Busy Betty, and she might want to switch to bus. That is something that we may really want to do. Can you think of 2 other activities you could do? And what about person 3? How can we assist him? How can we change his modal choice? So what are the key takeaways from this today's podcast? First of all, people trade off time and cost in determining modal choice. Secondly, the choice relates to both their modal attributes and the traveler attributes. And finally, as we look at policy changes, if you want to understand the impacts of these policy decisions, we have to understand the choice behavior of commuters so that we can really understand how they are going to be impacted. So what's next for us? Well, next podcast, we'll be dealing with the treatment of uncertainty, errors, and randomness in travel choice behavior. And I'm going to recommend 2 additional readings for you to cement today's lesson. The Traffic and Highway Engineering 5th edition by Gabel and Howell, and Papa Costas and Papadouros Transportation Engineering and Planning. So see you next time as our next podcast.